My name is Cohen, and today I'm going to be comparing a Klaus Heyne modified U87 to a stock U87. But before I get to that, though, I'd like to take a small detour and talk about Klaus Heyne, his work, and his contribution to the pro audio community. So I guess let's first start off, who is Klaus Heyne? First off, God rest my soul if I am mispronouncing your name. I am so sorry. Again, it's the American in me, What is being American if you're not mispronouncing names? I mean, am I right? Am I right, folks? So Klaus Heyne is a mic tech who is best known for specializing in modifications for high-end microphones. When it comes to the list of people who are in a similar field who have modified microphones in the past, usually most modifications end up devaluing the microphone. Klaus Heine's modifications are the only ones that have ever seen an increase of the microphone's value in the used marketplace. That's a pretty high indication of the quality of work that we're talking about. But I guess in broad general terms, what's the end goal for one of his microphones? Well, in short, the end goal for any of his modifications is to increase the utility of the microphone as a recording tool. Now, that's a very broad definition, So I guess I'll try to break it up a little bit into two camps. So there are some modifications to the microphones that could be seen as more, objective, for lack of a better word. Some of the more, objective modifications include things like increasing the microphone's signal-to-noise ratio or increasing the microphone's headroom, or maybe removing filters or components that were put inside of the microphone that rob it of its potential beauty that maybe were installed because of German broadcasting standards, yada, yada, yada. Those are some that maybe people would view as a bit more, objective in most, if about everybody, is going to appreciate those benefits. Some of the modifications are a bit more subjective, Some of them include things like, changing the microphone capsule's tuning or changing certain components like the wires to one that he finds is a bit more musical or a bit more higher in resolution. And removing certain components like negative feedback, which he feels like ends up whittling down the resolution in a given microphone. Now, especially when we start throwing around terms like resolution and musicality and stuff like that, we are definitely falling into very subjective territory, though. But if I could speak so frankly, though, I do feel, though, that, and this is probably it's not an aberrant opinion of mine, but I would say that due to the overwhelming amount of positive reviews for Klaus Heine's work, I do believe a lot of the stuff that maybe people would view as a bit more subjective in the modifications are quite universal in their appeal, That despite, how us as engineers we're all chasing different sounds and, different things in our music, though, there are certain aspects, especially for a recording tool, like a microphone, that are maybe a bit more universal than we'd normally think in regards to what our taste and preferences are. But when it comes to the judge of character of that stuff, though, Klaus Heyne has a really good ear for that. Something that I feel like is a bit underappreciated when people talk about Klaus Heine's work, because you can find tons and tons and tons of testimonials about how good his work is, yada, yada. In fact, there's very few people in his industry who have as sterling of a reputation as he does. I will try to explain why that is and my own personal experience with the work that he's done for me, my interactions with him to try to justify a little bit of that. Klaus Heyne has been a huge wealth of information in regards to high quality or more esoteric microphones out there. And while this information is still very much appreciated today, and there's still so much, a staggering and honestly existentially terrifying amount of information that simply just isn't on the internet, or at least in any easy to access place. More so than his contributions now, though, a huge amount of his contribution and like his work is his own forum on Pro Sound Web, Klaus Heyne's Mic Lab, I believe it's called. Like, that thing's been operating for like 2 decades or something at this point. And it's a very, very, very like high quality archive of like firsthand like personal experience that people have with pro audio equipment. Mostly, again, microphones, mostly recording tools, et cetera, et cetera. But though, back in the early days of like the internet, you know, like that information was hard to find. You know, we take for granted how easy it is just to be able to Google something and just like, you know, look up so-and-so information about like any given topic. You know, oh, what are the best microphones? What microphones do people use all the time? What album, you know, what did they record with this album? What microphones did they use on that album? We take that for granted. And Klaus Heyne's forum was like and still is, a great source for a lot of that information. And it's because of Klaus Heyne's like moderation on that forum, you know, that has kept that place in like a really well-preserved condition. That was terrifying. Like, for instance, a lot of his moderation in regards to making sure that nobody is shilling their services on there, or that like, you know, people aren't talking from like third-party experiences, or, you know, he said, she said kind of stuff. All the information comes from like people's firsthand personal experience with the microphones. And also like, you know, making sure that like it's free of like, you know, spam, AI, bots, yada yada, just junk, you know? But as a result though, it's very easy and very digestible to like just go through and hear like, again, really interesting and esoteric subjects being discussed on that forum that I don't see being discussed anywhere, you know? Some of them are more of the nose-picky kind of subjects of like, you know, talking about specific components that are used in microphones. But some of them are a bit more broad and esoteric, talking about like, you know, the, you know, what is the like emotional rendering of audio that comes from like inherent types of microphones, you know? And it's not just like Joe Schmo contributing to the forum. I mean, like you have like people like David Bach and David Josephson, both Davids, contributing to the forum, you know. And I personally, I just think that's really cool. While it's not so much active nowadays, a still occasional post here or there will show up though. To me, it serves more as an archive, just to be able to go through and hear a bunch of people talk about these subjects, you know. And I honestly though, I hugely respect the preservation of that form, because especially nowadays, it seems like because of like the consolidation of the internet, everything just being kind of like, you know, hyper condensed into like a few websites, a lot of information that's put on this forum or that forum or this website or that website, just because the money isn't there, or not many people go or are willing to go to those other websites, there's always the fear of that information just going poof, and, you know, someone just stops paying the server costs and that information is lost to time forever, you know? I think about Neumann's forum that existed for a decent amount of time. I know that there's some like web archive links to that, but the web archive, it doesn't work perfectly for everything, and I don't like relying on specifically just them to like preserve the internet and its history. But stuff like that makes me terrified, you know? And again, me personally, I've learned so much from that specific forum. I was able to go through and just, you know, read all of the different posts that everyone had posted on there, you know, and just be able to take in a lot of information. And I find that to be like an invaluable source. And in fact, that's kind of one of the reasons that I even do these videos to begin with, is that I try to find certain topics or certain subjects that people haven't posted on like YouTube, for instance. YouTube still is like weirdly enough, a place that most people go to in regards to like information nowadays. Most people aren't willing to go to, you know, a certain forum here or a certain forum there or wherever to like try to like get information. They just kind of want it in like a nice, tidy video in like a site that they're already used to, you know? And especially nowadays with so much of the information that we're receiving nowadays from like search engines and stuff like that being so low quality because of like the usage of like AI and stuff. I think nowadays it's more important than ever to make like a sort of active effort onto like reaching the audience where they're at. Because if you don't meet them where they're at to tell them the right thing, then somebody will come along and tell them the wrong thing. You know, don't you worry about that. So I think it's, you know, stuff like this I think is important, not to, you know, toot my own horn here. But that's, you know, one of the reasons I want to make this video is that there's really isn't a lot of like discussion or comparisons about Klaus Heyne's modification work and him as just a contributor in the pro audio community. That's enough about the broad stuff, though. I'm going to talk about my own personal experience with dealing with him, you know, and how much he's helped me. Klaus Heyne has modified a few of my microphones. And I have asked him and consulted him for several, you know, parts of, like, for instance, building my studio, asking him random questions here and there. And at every single interaction that I've ever had with him, he has just been incredibly nice and incredibly patient. I have emailed him with so many stupid questions and pestered him about, you know, modifying this thing and that thing. I'm still crossing my fingers, hoping to God he'll modify my Neumann KM88s one day. But he has done so much help for me, you know, and to me though, like, it means a lot. I will be honest, especially in regards to I guess the business side of the pro audio world and a bit of the YouTuber, social media influencer area. Like, I'm not happy with what I see out there. Unfortunately, I think in a lot of aspects in the pro audio world, there is just simply just like an information divide, you know? Like, a lot of the stuff that I've learned in here, that's terrifying. I don't like that. A lot of the stuff that I've learned in the pro audio community has come from like so many disparate and far-reaching places of the internet. An interview here, an email sent over there, this forum post here, you know? And oftentimes people won't go to that links for trying to research or look into a subject, you know? And as a result, you know, you just have a large amount of the community that just simply doesn't really know better. And there's also another side of it where is a lot of people who are unfortunately, you know, shilling or are exploiting their audience, specifically because that, you know, they're paid to, you know, or it financially benefits them. And I don't like either of those behaviors, you know. So I try to contribute into my own special way, you know. I think the stuff that I'm speaking of is of quality, or at least I try to make it to be. And don't worry about shilling. I make no fucking money on these videos. And I guarantee you, you know, my substantial sub count on my channel of 14 subscribers is not going to make or break Klaus Heyne's career. So there's no worry about that. I specifically do this for the love of the game, you know, because this is my whole fucking world, you know. Like this means a lot to me. So that's why I contribute and why I make these videos to begin with. And a lot of what I admire from Klaus Heyne is that it's that same quality. It's the love of the game. You don't go to the lengths that he does if you don't care about your job, you know, or you don't care about your work. And Klaus Heyne does, incredibly so. And I admire that a lot. That's a lot of preamble and yapping about Klaus Heyne as the person and as the contributor in the pro audio community. A lot of preamble and a lot of junk that isn't about the specific modifications and the specific microphones themselves. I know, I apologize. So I'm gonna grab the two microphones here. Ooh, ow, I'm getting fucking old. This is the stock U87 AI. And this one is the modified U87. Now, both of these started out as AI models. One of them, I believe, serial number is like in the 130,000. Yeah, this one's in the 130,000, and this one is in the 140,000. I could be completely wrong. I'll correct this information if I am. But in regards to like the U87 AI models that you want if you're trying to purchase them in the future, your first stop is trying to find a well-maintained version of a U87 AI that has a serial number of 85,000 and below. This was before Neumann introduced the dreaded daughter board into their circuit. This was still while the U87 had its old case 67/87 capsule tuning. Somewhere around the early 2000s, they changed the tuning of their capsules, and some of them, not all of them, but a not insignificant amount of them are a bit bass shy and a bit sibilant or a bit harsh in the mid-high frequencies. You usually want to try to buy a U87 AI before that was implemented. Now, unfortunately though, again, since U87s are just workhorse microphones, a lot of those older U87 AIs are kind of beat to shit and they just weren't well kept, they weren't well maintained. So if you can't get one of those in a good condition, the next best stop is to try to get one, I believe, of 130,000 or newer. That's when the daughter board was removed. Now, it will still have the more modern tuning of the capsule. But again, these are all handmade capsules, so one of them may speak to you more differently than the other, and they're just better specimens, My U67 reissue, which has a K67 capsule, when I first got it, it sounded like shit. It was terrible. Klaus Heyne tuned it, and it sounded amazing. This one, though, on the other hand, funny enough, I just bought this from a pawn shop online. I was terrified that it was going to be like a fake, but no, it's a real one. And it sounds fantastic. Way better than my U67 did, like stock, So I think this capsule is a good performer, or at least a good indication of like a good specimen of the modern U87 capsule tunings, at least in my ear. So I think this is going to be a good test compared to this one right here. So in the modifications that Klaus Heyne does for his U87, which I believe, at least I'm assuming, is his most popular mod. It entails a lot of things, but the big ones that you want to be on the lookout for is going to be the tuning of the capsule, the most important part. He usually tunes them, makes them a bit more relaxed, have a bit more low-mid content to them. He also replaces the transformer in it. The transformer of the U87 isn't that good of a performer, apparently so. And the new transformer he adds in here has a couple of benefits. One makes it a bit more beefy in the low end, and I believe it also improves the signal-to-noise ratio, which is useful because part of his AI modification is that he specifically increases the headroom to the old vintage U87 standards. The downside of that, though, is that the signal-to-noise ratio is diminished because of that. So the added transformer mitigates a lot of that drawback. In the end, though, the unmodified U87 AI, which has a way better signal-to-noise ratio compared to the U87, the vintage one, the old one. But the drawback, though, is the headroom of this AI model is quite abhorrent. This serves as like a mitigation of a lot of those issues, still has better headroom, not great, it's not like a U67, for instance, but better headroom and better signal-to-noise ratio than the older ones. The headroom is and the signal-to-noise ratio is part of the end result, but the end result output, though, is this one's going to be a little bit more hotter than this one still. So whenever I'm comparing and doing the test and stuff, I will be purposely leaving the preamps at the same gain setting just to make sure I'm not pushing one preamp harder than the other, but then just turning down the output of this guy and the comparison test in the DAW, in the computer. This one, also in the U87, there is, I believe, the negative feedback circuit in the microphone is curtailed so that it, keeps the resolution high in the microphone. Please don't ask me to explain that term. We're not going to get through this video if I do, man. Just it's a bit contentious when it comes to like negative feedback circuits and microphones and stuff like that. But in general, most people prefer microphones without negative feedback circuits. The most highly sought after valuable microphones of all time usually don't have negative feedback in the circuitry. It's usually a net negative. So it's a it's a benefit for sure. There are, again, some more modifications and some more changes here and there though, but that's the bulk of them. But in the comparison test, I'm going to be doing 2 tests. So the first one is going to be 2 different takes of me singing into both of these microphones with no headphones, in the same orientation like this. And then the second test, and then with the first test though, no EQ, compression, no processing of the sound. It's just going to be completely raw. With the second test though, it's going to be the same take, but it's going to be recorded like this, capsule to capsule like that, recording several different instruments in a full song arrangement. And I'm going to be doing the mixing and mastering process for those tracks. And I'm going to process them separately. I'm not going to do the same processing on each one. I want to kind of show you how when starting out with a different microphone from the other, it sort of informs the music process, if you will. So I will be, doing a little bit of, lack of a better word, shit polishing on this AI signal a little bit though. But again, I just kind of want to show you the difference that the end result will end up making, comparing the 2 tracks. Just to see how much it's going to matter in a full song arrangement if you record every instrument with these microphones. There is going to be one fault that you should be aware of for the second test, which is that if you record 2 microphones like this, the body of the microphone is going to block reflections from wherever the body is in relation to the capsule. So the microphone, probably the Klaus Heyne one, that's on the bottom down here is going to hear less reflections from the floor and more of the ceiling, and vice versa for the AI model on top, which is that it's going to hear more reflections from the floor and less from the ceiling. So it won't be perfect, but I feel like that's a better compromise than doing 2 separate takes for each of the songs, because the performances are just going to be too different. But hopefully that'll be fine. So the recording chain is going to be 2 vintage Austrian Gotham GAC3 cables into 2 vintage Neve 1064s, into 2 Gotham GAC4 cables, into a Motu 16A recording at 192 kilohertz at 24-bit. I've never seen an actor so confused with a script, a coward quick to throw the first punch, an apathetic perfectionist, a disappointment, the smoldering ego not publicly on every sense. The senseless perception of the world you labored over in your head, a poison you self-prescribed, a wanderer, an adventurer with the deep desire to hide from everything and sleep. I hate you so much, I hate you so much, it's true. 'Cause I'm the only person I know. 'Cause I'm the only person I know. 'Cause I'm the only person I know. It's true. I've never seen an actor so confused with a script. I've never seen an actor so confused with a script. A wanderer, an adventurer with the deep desire to hide from everything and sleep. The wanderer, an adventurer with the deep desire to hide from everything and sleep. 'Cause I'm the only person I know. 'Cause I'm the only person I know. seen an actor so confused with the script, a coward quick to throw the first punch, an apathetic perfectionist, a disappointment, a smoldering ego, not probably in every sense, a senseless perception of the world you labored over in your head, a poison you self-prescribed, a wanderer, an adventurer with a deep desire to hide from everything and sleep. I hate you so much, I hate you so much, it's true. 'Cause I'm the only person I know. 'Cause I'm the only person I know. 'Cause I'm the only person I know. It's true. For someone who's lived so little, you'll have a lot, a passion that burns without a spark, a nightingale summer, a loser who's never lost, the most sheepish beggar you'll ever meet, a touch-stopped whore, a romantic cynic, a ghost in the real world, too stubborn to move on. If nothing is nothing, and everything is everything, then my whole world lives in you. You're my favorite person I know, and I hate to see you go. 'Cause I'm the only person I know. 'Cause I'm the only person I know. 'Cause I'm the only person I know. It's true. Yeah, that's I guess that's the end of the video. I hope this information was of some use to y'all. Take care there. This is another test. This is another test. I just keep doing test recordings till I die. Till I die. I just keep doing test recordings. That's my whole fucking life. I'm a lab rat.